Bangladeshi youth are at the forefront of a movement they say aims to restore trust and hope in the country's future. Protests that started because of government job quotas have now morphed into a nationwide uprising against the ruling class in place there for the past 15 years. I'm Anelise, Borges, and on today's episode of The Stream, we look into the crisis that engulfed the nation of 170 million and what is next for Bangladesh. We begin in Bangladesh's capital, Dhaka, from where we're joined by Prapti Taposhi, a student at Jahangir University. Thank you so much for being part of the stream today, Prapti. You've been joining the protests. I believe you just came home from one. Why have you been taken to the streets?
Simply, we are now in the streets. Thousands of our brothers and sisters have died. Thousands are being abducted and thousands are being picked up in jail. So now the people of Bangladesh, even the students, the job holders, the singers, the writers, everyone is out on the roads. Everyone is out online so that they could protest and they could ask for their rights as a citizen and as a human being.
The government is disputing those figures and the figures of people killed. But I have heard from students in Bangladesh saying that the country has been transformed, that it felt like a war zone. Did you feel the same? And what is the situation like now?
Completely, this still feels like a war zone. I don't know if I'm going to be picked up the next. We don't know when and from where the students are going to be picked up. We know still there are no freedom of expression. We cannot even move to the streets. Students are being abducted and being picked up from their home in plain clothes. The police and the detective branch of Bangladesh have been picking up students, student leaders. Our one coordinator, Arif Suhel, he's been given false case and false accusations. So we are watching mass arrest from the roads. The students are simply on the roads and the police are arresting them. Right now, I just heard a news from Rangpur that a lot of protesters have been picked up by the police just because they were doing a wall art, they were doing a road art. So this is simply a war zone. I don't know if you don't call this a war zone. We are not living now in a war. Then how a war should look like.
The UN has actually called on an independent investigation on the government's response to these protests. Do you believe that the international community should do something to help Bangladesh, or is that a situation that should be sorted internally?
Absolutely not. The government could solve the matter internally before all the bloodshed, before our brothers and sisters have died by the bullet shot. This is now a matter of our rights, a matter of democratic rights, and the government is completely committing the crimes against humanity. A lot of thousands of our brothers and sisters have died, and thousands are being picked up. Over 9,000 people have been picked up and have been put into jail by the Bangladesh government. So obviously, we, the students of Bangladesh, we, the protesters of Bangladesh, ask cordially to every international media and every international community to come forward to help us and to ask questions to the government and to pressurize the government to take the liability of their actions. They have made our brothers and sisters dead. The police have shot open fire from the helicopter, from the rooftop to our brothers and sisters. They have died, and those who are alive, we are completely in tension and complete terror. We don't know when we are going to be picked up next. We don't know how or how much days we can be in roaming in free daylight. And the citizens are dying here. The innocent unarmed citizen people, the Bangladeshi police, the border guard Bangladesh, the Bangladeshi army, the detective branch of Bangladesh, CID, everyone is committing crime against the unarmed innocent civilians, unarmed innocent students and people of Bangladesh. And this is not an internal matter anymore. The international media, the international community should come forward to save ourselves, to help ourselves, and to help humanity.
What you're describing is an atmosphere of violence, but also of a lot of fear. Where do you see this protest movement going now? I mean, you just described students are being picked up randomly. Some of the leaders of this movement have been detained. Some are missing. Where do you see the movement going next?
The movement is not about quota anymore. Our brothers and sisters have died. We don't even know the actual number. The government said they are yet to determine, but we assume there are officially in the newspapers. We saw the records of over 250 deaths, and the children could not even help themselves from the brutality of the Bangladeshi police and Bangladeshi government. 4 years old, 6 years old, 11 years old students and children have died. 14 and 16 years old children have died, and even the Bangladeshi government, the Bangladeshi court have put the minor children in handcuffed. They're handcuffed and they're put into jail. Not even in the children's juvenile court, they are giving the actual court to the minor children. And we think this is not about quota. Absolutely not about quota anymore. These are the protests are about our democratic rights. The protests are about rights for as a human being, for the humanity. And the movement has started as a young-led movement, as a student-led movement, but it has become a mass uprising of the whole people of Bangladesh. Many movement leaders have been picked up, and you already know that many are in detention, many are being held up, many are given false cases, just I have said previously. But we all believe us, we all are leaders now, we all are coordinators now, and we will continue our fight till this fascist regime, till this autocratic regime is down, till this autocracy is down, and till our demands have met.
Prapti, thank you so much for joining us here on the stream today.
Thank you a lot.
We have been speaking to people in Bangladesh for the show for a few days now and managed to collect some testimonies. The vast majority of the people we spoke to asked to remain anonymous for fear of what could happen to them or to their family. And that in itself speaks volumes about the state of the country right now. What's going on? What's happening where you are?
It's very dangerous for us right now. In this situation, when we're nowhere to go, no one to trust.
Right now, we are laying low because I saw at least 5 people getting killed in front of me. The government does not acknowledge these students dying at all.
I'm afraid, but I'm not afraid for myself, but for my family.
The police is shooting our students directly. They just attacked us.
We were marching. I saw police firing and throwing tear shell. Meanwhile, my tiny hands had only few pebbles. That moment, I felt so powerless.
No media in our country is showing this footage.
They didn't tell how many brothers and sisters and civilians were shot dead for no reason.
You see, the machinery of the state is the only thing that's stopping us from taking down this government. So we have to take every action in our own hands, and we have to do whatever it takes to stand our ground. They cannot kill all of us.
Students not going to forget about this. You have to understand whatever we are doing right now for the betterment of our country.
There is only one message to the PM. If you can't take liability of the martyrs and take action against your forces immediately, step down Sheikh Hasina. The change will come soon. Our spring is nearby.
Stay safe, but also stay in touch with us. And I would like to continue this conversation. I would like to welcome to the show right now Tasnima Zaman, a Columbia University graduate joining us from New York. Rubaiya Gulshan, a student at Wayne State College joining us from Nebraska. And finally, the student behind the Bangladeshi voice on Instagram, whose identity we're not divulging for his protection. So we're going to call him John, which is not his real name. John is joining us from the UK. Thank you all so much for being part of the stream today. You guys have been watching this from the outside, but obviously this story has affected you. You have family and friends in Bangladesh. John, if I can start with you, how has it been to watch your home country engulfed in chaos? I mean, I believe you started the Bangladeshi Voice in order to document what's been happening in your country, but also to get the word out.
Yeah, like I mentioned earlier, the start of Bangladeshi Voice was more of a personal motivation. But now, even I did not imagine the extent this thing would have gone on to. Previously, in 2018 and 2013, we have seen how this regime has tried to thwart protests and tried to shut down any form of anti-government movements. But to this scale, this is something that was absolutely unimaginable, absolutely something straight out of storybooks, something straight out of movies. And watching this unfold live in front of our eyes is not something that we ever thought we'd have to do. However, right now. It's the more the days are passing, I think the more the nightmare is coming out live, and we are just having to witness the horrors, the horrific ways the government is cracking down on the students. Like Prapti was mentioning that there were students being picked up left and right, 16-year-old, 8-year-old students, and children are dying. I mean, the footages I have seen personally, trying to put out news on the Bangladeshi Voice myself, I was so traumatized I could not sleep for 2 or 3 nights in a row, some of the footages I've seen. So definitely this is not something we ever thought we'd see out of Bangladesh. And this is something that we think does not only require international attention, but I think there needs to be much bigger steps to ensure that things like this do not continue anymore.
Tasnima, what about you? What has been your experience? I mean, you've also been posting about the situation in your country.
Yes. So a lot of the way that as a Bangladeshi in the diaspora, and I think Bangladeshis in general, I think understand our cultural identity comes from our history. And I think in this moment, a lot of what I've been thinking about is connections to our history and different pinnacle points in our liberation struggle. Specifically, these student-led protests are reminding me of 1952 when Dhaka University students were also killed over voicing their opinions and fighting against political suppression. And to see that and to hear that all my life and now see that unfold 70 years later and to see student protesters meet with the utmost violence, I think it's also, we're coming from a very specific, very special perspective in the sense that I'm coming from my college campuses where I was involved in student protests, and to see my own country people involved now, but to be met with violence and absolute political suppression. And to see that privilege that I guess I had, you know, being able to protest freely in some regard, and not to see that same right be allotted to my country people back home, I think it's absolutely disheartening, and it's absolutely representative of the lack of democracy that exists in that country. And, you know, I think there in all of that violence and that brutality, there's a source of inspiration to see the youth really taking to the streets and to feel connected to young people abroad and to have young people here speaking up, young people abroad speaking up. So that's how I'm feeling right now.
But obviously they're paying a very high price for speaking up. Rubaiya, what about you? What did you hear from people at home on how things have been in the last few days?
So if I talk about the situation right now, it is very tense. The internet has been restored, but the internet speed is still very slow. And the government has restricted the social media as well. So if anyone in my country wants to use the social media, they have to go through different routes. The curfews are still on in certain places, and there is a massive crackdowns with widespread abductions. And I also have a couple of friends who were studying in public and private universities in Bangladesh, and like Prapti told, that they are being picked up, and the police, especially the police, are checking the phones of the students even when they are conducting the house raids and they're searching for students. They'll search on their phone if they have any different political views, and if they have any different political opinions, and if they find anything, they immediately put them in the jail. And yeah, that is right now, this is the situation, and people are living in fear and absolute uncertainty.
Pretty much everyone we have been speaking to says the same thing, that students are being picked up randomly just for being outside sometimes. But John, a member of the Bangladesh government, the country's information minister, Mohammad Arafat, actually spoke to Al Jazeera, and he said that third-party actors have been fueling the unrest. What is your response to that? What are your thoughts on this?
I mean, the Home Minister makes a lot of statements. I think a few days ago, he was just on Al Jazeera, and he was saying the prime minister was protecting the citizens, protecting the students. It sparked a question, what exactly were they doing to protect people or the students? What we've seen so far is not an example of protecting students. Similarly, what he's also saying about the third parties is not true. The government has been peddling lies for 15 years, and after a while, you naturally become immune to their lies. They keep lying, and they keep lying some more. At this point, everyone knows how the government uses the third-party accusations on BNP and Jamaat to avert the blame on themselves. I mean, just today, I was seeing online how the government has announced a national mourning day for the people who have died in the protests, and the citizens have completely revolted. The government is urging everyone to use the color black everywhere, put up black color wallpapers on their social media. Bangladesh Awami League has put that on their profile picture on Facebook, but the people don't want to do that. Hundreds and thousands of people have used the color red instead, and over here, Bangladesh Awami League is blaming BNP and Jamaat for inciting this whole motivation. They have incited this whole thing that use your red colors. On the other hand, we're seeing students, lawyers, teachers from various universities who are standing in solidarity with that. So my question is, if BNP and Jamaat are doing all this, then we are all BNP and Jamaat. All the teachers, all the lawyers, all the people who have died, all the people who want to have this change in this reform of the government would have been labeled BNP and Jamaat. If you have anything to say that's not going with the government's own opinions, then you're labeled as those names. And I think that stands no ground. It makes no sense. And we're tired of their lies.
The government insists that this is all political and is blaming the political opposition. Tasnima, the UN has called for an independent investigation into the government's response into possible human rights violations. Do you think one will happen? I mean, John was just saying Bangladesh needs more than international attention. It perhaps needs international intervention. What are your thoughts on this?
I think that is absolutely the case. I think this is a situation where we need some form of international pressure and force to come in and truly uphold the quote unquote democracy that I think exists. But I think that if I'm hopeful about whether or not an actual investigation will take place, I think the country has, as John was mentioning, decades worth of human rights violations and lack of transparency in regards to government abuses that are happening at the universities, that are different forms of political inequities. And so I think it's really great that the students and the youth and just the everyday people are very much getting involved in trying to take control of their own country, take control of the democracy that exists, that they want to exist in that country. But I think the international community needs to have that voice and speak out for the Bangladeshi people. If I'm hopeful that an investigation like this will happen, I don't know how cooperative the government will be. Again, there is that lack of transparency and cooperation. So that's where I'm standing.
Rubaiya, what about your personal situation? I mean, you have your family, your immediate family in Bangladesh. I believe your parents were quite worried about you joining the show today. What have they been telling you?
Yeah. So there is a group of people who are in fear and uncertainty, and there are some people who are now fearless and they want to restore the democracy, they want to restore the freedom of speech, and they want to reform the country, like my mother. So when I told my mother yesterday that I have an interview with Al Jazeera and I will talk about the current situation in Bangladesh, and I will talk about the dictatorship of the Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. And my father was kind of hesitant, but on the other hand, my mother told me that do whatever you wanted to do. If they threat us, if they want to kill us, if they put a gun on our head, I will welcome that. But I want you to speak the truth and let the world know what is happening inside the Bangladesh. My mother is now fearless and supports me. So, yeah.
Wow. So, I mean, how does that make you feel? Are you afraid for their safety?
Yes, I am their child. So obviously I am afraid for my parents' safety. But at the same time, since I'm being interviewed by one of the influential media, Al Jazeera. So I think that will create a pressure on the government that if they do any harm to our family, so it will be widespread and people will know that I did this interview, and for that reason, they just harmed my family. And everything will be proved that government wants to shut our mouths.
Hopefully that will not happen. Guys, we're approaching the end of the show here, and I would like to get a message from you in terms of your hopes for the future of Bangladesh. John, can I get you to go first?
I think I'm not sure about whether we will have democracy, any kind of democracy reinstated in the country anytime soon. I think from what I've been seeing this past decade, I think Sheikh Hasina has orchestrated a very carefully calculated account. She has been able to establish a one-party democracy like her father wanted in the first place with the country prior to 1975. And today, a lot of people that I have interviewed myself do resonate with that. They agree to the point that we have become a one-party state. And the roots of that belong to Sheikh Mujibur Rahman's initial motive with Bakshal in 1974. However, I do hope and I do dream, and my primary hope for the country is that we get rid of this fascist regime and we work towards democracy. I don't know if we will be able to establish that, but we want to work toward that. And I think that's what the youth of today wants as well.
Right. Tasnima, what about you? What do you hope for the future? Do you think students can bring about change?
Absolutely. I think as Prapti mentioned, this isn't just a movement about the quota system anymore. It's a much larger call for reform in the Bangladeshi government and the way that democracy operates in the country. I think this is the beginning of, hopefully, what my hope can be is an actual overall governmental call to action and reform and movement away from, as was mentioned, authoritarian regime. I have to have hope in the Bangladeshi people. I think the way that I understand our character and our spirit is one of resilience. So as John mentioned, it's been decades worth of authoritarian rule, and which is wary and despairing, but I have to have hope, that there has to, now that there is a lot more international exposure, I think students and people everywhere, especially amidst the blackout and the shutdown, we need to keep talking about this. We need to have this be one of the centers of our conversations around the world. And then I think in that way, we'll also be able to keep this movement alive.
Rubaiya, a final word from you. What are your hopes for the future of Bangladesh?
So every significant movement in Bangladesh history has involved students, including the language movement in 1952, our fight for freedom in 1971. And today the students are united again. They started with a goal to reform the quota system, but now they shift their goal to reform the whole country and restore the freedom of speech and free the country from the autocratic rule of Sheikh Hasina. And I believe that all of their sacrifices and their efforts will lead to positive changes.
All right, Tasnima, Rubaiya, John, thank you so much for being part of the stream today and sharing your experiences and your views with us. And thank you all for watching. Keep in touch with us on social media. You can send us your questions and suggestions with the hashtag or the handle AJStream, and we will look into them. Take care, and I'll see you soon.